Good afternoon to all, and a very warm welcome to our Honorable Chief Guest who has arrived here, Dr. Avinash Subbe, our Honorable VC Ma'am, who may join us online since he is out of station, our Pro Vice Chancellor Sir, Dr. Milind Duka, Registrar Sir, who is also out of station, and our NPTI team, Dr. Jha, our officers from the MUHS Parivar, our Finance Officer, Dr. Kadu, and all other faculty members from NPTI and students who are present here. A warm welcome to all of you. Today, we are celebrating our Silver Jubilee function, which is going throughout the year. On that occasion, we have organized a session of series, which is going to be throughout the year. That is Dr. T.S. Ahir Oration Series. In that, we are going to have a lecture which is going to be taken now by our guest speaker, that is Dr. Avinash Subbe sir. He needs no introduction, but still, to say a few words, I'll just say that being a student, it is an honor and privilege for me to stand before you and say these few words. Besides being a renowned GI surgeon, sir is known for his administrative skills also. He has been the ex-director of the Medical Education and Major Hospitals of Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. He is Emeritus Professor of Surgical Gastroenterology at St. G.S. Medical College, ex-CE of KEMS Simon Hospital, Secretary of the Asia Pacific Hepatobiliary Association, President-elect of the Indian Association of Surgical Gastroenterology, past President of Indian Chapter of Indian Association of Hepatobiliary Pancreatic Association, past President of the Academy of Health Professions Educators of India, ex-member of Academic Council and Board of Studies at MUHS, Director of the GSMC Bengal Regional Institute, member of the expert group of MCI and editorial board, Medical Education Journal of Postgraduate Medicine, past associate editor of the Clinical Teacher, chairman of the GI Surgery, National Board of Examination, member of the national committees at various posts for the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, recipient of over 43 national and international awards, fellowships and medals. He is also a recipient of the Dr. B.C. Roy Award, ANVI, NUHS and National Board Awards for Best Teacher. Recipient of International College of Surgeons Fellowship. He is trained at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Hospital and Center at New York and Hamburg. FEMA Fellow of 2002. The list is long and it continues further. He has publications in national and international journals, which are over 263. So you can understand why we have got him today for our topic, which is going to be selection of a research topic for your thesis. And I guess sir will now throw light upon those intricacies and show us the path as to how to select a topic and move ahead with our thesis. So I welcome you, sir.
Respected Vice Chancellor sir, Control of Examination, Dean sir, all the members of MUHS, all my students. Also, I would like to remember management has been a close colleague. So I think it's a really very nostalgic and honorable for me. But I've seen this university from 1998 when there was nothing, and now it's celebrated 25 years. And you have invited me to 25th year. It itself is a big honor for me. And I definitely cherish this honor. But you have given me. And it's so nice to see so many friends, old memories of this particular institution and organization. It's so pleasant and overwhelming for me. I think thank you for making me part of this 25th year celebration. And I think I would like to state a bit more on the topic of selecting a research topic and how to formulate research questions, especially for your thesis. Because this is something which I struggled when I was a student. When I was a postgraduate student, I'm sure everybody for the first 3 or 6 months struggles what kind of a thesis topic I should have. And then after you always find we do so much of work, but we don't find topics to really work and publish. So I thought this was one of the relevant topics we should really talk about. I have no conflict of interest to declare. I would like to pay my thanks and respect to Dr. Madhavi Manikar, Honorable Vice Chancellor Madam, Brigadier Saurav Singh, who really organized the whole my visit. Dr. Nitya Gopte was my colleague and my teachers, colleagues, and students here. Now, if you really see, there are a lot of issues in the research. All of us really face these research issues. And these are, first, are a lot of obstruction and challenges. When so people talk about research in India, they begin with obstructions. And they always say, I'm busy in a routine work. I have too much of postmortem load. I'm working too hard. You get caught into what is called as an activity trap. And I'm doing so many activities that I have no time to think. No research environment or encouragement. I feel MUHS made so much of efforts to give money to people who have published, but I think it's always underutilized. People don't take that grant also. There are no research grants, no recognition. Thesis is not given importance in many places. It is just a ritual, or sometimes it is even copied. Who is going to read my paper? That's what we always feel. Who is going to read my paper? Will I get my career advancement? And I do not know statistics. These are the common kind of reasons what people normally give when they normally say that I don't want to do research. So there has to be some motivation factors if somebody wants to do research. So if you really look, India is in a solid state of medical research in India. This is from Economic Times. And they paid 15, something like this huge amount of crore of rupees they spent. And they said that ICMR could not even list one practical application of their 100 research papers. So translational research is always poor in our country. Though many times we publish more, we don't do translational research. And that's the problem. This is not my words, these are words of the experts we have been talking about. Secondly, look at these forensics experts in scientist list. Among the top 1 lakh most highly cited scientists, there are only 30 allotted to forensic medicine. Because producer is there, I thought I must really put it down. Where we are we in the top place or no? And look at the various kinds of evaluations. So primary motivation for any kind of research is create self-efficacy and create a social and intellectual capital. So faculty has to have an internal motivation. And for PGs, if faculty stimulates, PGs do research. If faculty doesn't stimulate, PGs don't do research. So secondary motivation to always research culture in an organization, comprehensive faculty evaluation, recognition, uninterrupted blocks of time. You normally don't get time to think, and mentorship. So these are all there for motivating this kind of research. So most of you do a lot of clinical laboratory or forensic work. I've seen in our hospitals, OPDs are full, 200, 300 patients are waiting in OPD. KEM has an OPD of 8,000 OPD every day. Imagine the kind of patients of all over India. But the number of publications are much less than what their aims for PGI. AIMS publishes about 1,600 publications every year. PGI publishes 750. KEM publishes about 400 publications from an institution. So that is too less for an organization like KEM. So this is where we are at a problem. But we do not share our experiences with the world. We do a lot of clinical work, we do a lot of laboratory work, we do a lot of work, but we do not share. So the first question is, who reads my paper? So I would like to say there is a new world of bibliometrics and nullmetrics. Bibliometrics is when you look at my work, how it is seen, and nullmetrics is all about social media. Today we must understand social media matters. Twitter, you're all nullmetric. People read this on that. Now, to give you an idea, citations, I'm sure everybody knows about citations. This was my thesis, my first thesis, which I gave to my student in 1992. My first student I got in 89, then I gave it first thesis. It was an RCT, and we did this first RCT. It has more than 25,000 people have access to 660 citations. So people read it, and this was published in the Journal of Postgraduate Medicine, which was a simple AM journal, but it's a PubMed index. So people now read. So people have been accessing your articles in a big way. They're citing your articles. And it's an RCT. It is included in many times systematic reviews. People do read it. your articles. Look at, this is one of the articles I wrote about stress in medical students. There were a lot of suicides in our college. So I did this study, simple study. It's cited by 612 papers worldwide. And now they look at the citation. I have about 7,882 citations. This year I crossed 8,000. So that is a kind of an people read. This is citations. People read is different. So don't be underthinking people don't read it. People do read it. And people do cite. So put your all thoughts with whatever. I am also from the same kind of an agency you come out. I am also of the government hospital with all low resources, with not much of support. We have to do everything on our own. We have to type everything. But with that also you'll find people reading, and we should respect people reading that. So, in fact, in August 21, I was one of the scientific wide authors around the world where they normally cited that in Elsevier. So thanks to my teachers, colleagues, and institution. Having said that, let's come to the topic of the day. How do you select a topic for your thesis? So this is a question which everybody has in mind. Now, common dilemma, as I said. So let's say formulating a research question is the first thing when you do start doing your thesis. So what you should really do, you should first take a topic, read about it in detail, read the current literature, find out what is the current gap in that. And once you have found the current gap, then try to find out what is the need of the knowledge in the current scenario. And then you try to select and narrow your topic. So I'm going to give you a few examples how it was done and how it is being done across the world and in my own experience also. So if you think what is a research question, this is the first thing you should understand as a postgraduate. Is the objective of doing the study, it is the why of the study. Why are you doing this study? If you understand why you are doing the study, the rest of the things will put in practice. Methods, objectives, everything will come in practice. The uncertainty about the health issue that the researcher wishes to resolve. We always walk in small steps. There are not many more discoveries. There are small points which you want to really prove. And that's what we normally do with your research. So, why are research questions important? Because well-crafted questions guide the systematic planning of research. Formulating your questions precisely enables you to design a study with a good chance of answering them. So, if you have done a good research question, practically most of the time, your flow of your research is going to. So, spend time in selecting a topic for research. Spend 3 months, 4 months, I think, worth taking that time. As soon as you join, within a week, we should start reading and selecting. Many times, as a postgraduate, I feel I'm only 1 week over, why we should start. Let about a month go and we start reading about it. At least start thinking what I'm going to work my 2 years or 2.5 years. Because anyway, just once you're dedicated, then later 6 months. So topic point. So at least we should have 1 month later, we should at least have 2 or 3 months of your study and then finalize your research topic and start writing your English. So developing a research question, any ideas we have? So how do we go about ideas? So I'll give you some examples how people write about this. Do you recognize who is this person? He is Professor Alexander Fleming. In 1928, culture was left open. Fleming goes on a vacation. Mold growing and has inhibited the growth of staphylococci. Identified to be Penicillium notatum. Simmered the mold, extracted the antibiotic, published and presented to the world. Nobody listened to his work. It took, in 38, mold was taken by Flore and Chain, and then they developed penicillin, and Nobel Prize was then for all the researches in 1943. So, from 1928 to 1938, just because there was no, he did not present it well, or it was not looked by the world, so people had to really look at your research question properly. So what was the question they should have asked? Can the mold which killed the staphylococci culture be used to treat patients with staphylococcal infection? So if you would have just described it saying that the mold kills staphylococci, but the question should have been, can the mold which killed the staphylococci in culture used to treat patients with staphylococcal infection? Thoughtful question. One question changed the world of infectious disease. We have series of antibiotics. We could save so many patients. We still have so many antibiotics coming. That is the question. So planning one question can completely change the perspective of the world. Same thing for the learning point to this kind of a study. You have a prepared mind, persistence, and it's not that I'm so smart, it is just that I stay with problems longer. This is what Albert Einstein said. So you just think about it again and again. Maybe today you get an idea, you don't get the research question. Keep it in your drawer. After about 1 week, take it out again, relook at it again. Many times you get new ideas. Ask your two friends, they will give you what is relevant, and they will give you the research question. So be persistent, be with that kind of a thing. Like Alexander Fleming, after 10 years, he went into the main thing, and then he got the antibiotic. So he was just persistent. So this is what we should learn from that. Same, another systematic and assiduous search. Selman Waxman, I don't know whether you have heard it. He started working at the same time in 1900. And tuberculous bacilli destroyed in the soil. Actinomyces was found in the soil. Could an antimicrobial be found against tuberculosis? He asked this question and he published this in 1915. Imagine. But it was more of a descriptive. After Alexander Fleming asked a question and developed penicillin, he got idea, can I use this to treat patients with tuberculosis? And automatically he energized with the discovery of penicillin, isolated septomycin and awarded Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2009. So he took idea from Fleming. What was his research? He converted it into another research question and he got septomycin. With that, the tuberculosis therapy completed. These are all histories worth learning from that history. Let's go to the next step and find out. So, what was his question? Can I discover soil organisms similar to penicillin from which antimicrobials can be used? And this has opened a new world of antifungal antibiotics, antifungal, all this fungal thing giving antibiotics. And now we are treating with all that and treating all our patients. So draw inspiration from other researchers. Look at them, how they have gone. Look at people around you. There are so many who have done research, good research in your colleagues, peers, your friends. If they are able to do in the same system, why can't you do it in the same system? Exploit similar ideas rather than embarking on completely novel ideas. This is one message you should give, but many times, everybody is waiting for that lamp light or aha moment, Newton or something, that Apple coming, which doesn't happen every day. Even if you take the routine ideas and you try to advance them, that is especially fine. Everybody doesn't become a discovery man. Repeat or reproduce what someone else has already done. There's nothing wrong about doing it. Do it in your own context. If somebody has done, do it in your own context. I'll give you an example of my own registrar. I remember I had one registrar who went for laparoscopic training in 90s, somewhere in Strasbourg, and he came back and he said, sir, they are doing a new kind of a hernia repair, which is called as a Stopa's repair. So I gave a thesis topic to one of my students. He did a wonderful study. We published that study in JPGM. It was the first study of Stopa's repair in India, and it was quoted into the Mastery of Surgery textbook. Imagine a student's thesis of 25-30 cases, well done, well presented in a PubMed journal, can get placed into a Mastery of Surgery textbook, which is named with Thapar et al. So I thought very happy that a student's thesis can go up to that level. And that is only because we have just thought somebody's idea and tried to do it in our own. Look at the topics like this. Journal of Forensic and Legal Medicine, January 22 issue. Exploring the use of selfies in human identification in forensic odontology. Don't you think it's a very interesting topic? And people have done this work. You can easily do this topic as a proposal. What does it really require? And COVID was one challenging. Challenge existing dogma. COVID was something which we all faced. COVID and autopsy examination, infectious disease and autopsy. There are always dilemmas. Should we really do that? So COVID and autopsy, I think, proposal of autopsy guidelines in infectious disease, preparation of post-COVID data. So they have now got something, they are going to change it. Korea, Japan people, everybody has changed the way they do autopsy. The laws have changed based on what they learned in COVID. So look at this another example I'll give you of surgery. Many of my examples will be of surgery, so you have to accept them. Now, mechanical bowel preparation for colorectal surgery. This is a topic which has been changing over years. There has been Cochrane studies which have been done. The last Cochrane study says that for rectum, you should do it. For colon and colon, you may not really do for those anastomosis. So these are something which you can always test in your own subject. Identify an area of importance to your country. Always you should try to find out area which is good for your country. For example, I remember, I'll tell you this story of ergonomics in laparoscopic surgery. I used to do a lot of laparoscopic surgeries and now also I do it. But that time, somewhere in 2000, I started severely getting backache and shoulder pain. So I went to various orthopedic surgeons and somebody took X-ray and they said, this is muscle pull, you do this and all. I realized why it is happening. Then I realized that this is because of the ergonomic imbalance which I am doing at the time of laparoscopy. There was no publications, hardly 1 or 2 publications in the literature. I tried to read about it. Nobody really told me what it is. I went to physiotherapists. They taught me about musculoskeletal. I wrote this first paper in ergonomics in laparoscopic surgery. Today, this paper is cited more than 150 times. It's the first primary paper on scientific way written on laparoscopic surgery. Now I've written many chapters, talks on this, but that time my knowledge about ergonomics was so poor. Now even the theaters, instruments, surgeries are all based on ergonomics. But that because I suffered. And because I suffered, we have to learn from that suffering. So these are the simple topics. This is again given to my one undergraduate student who published this as his ICMR project. So I think the students are very smart. You have to just guide them and tell them that this is the way you would like to do it. So try think about an idea, identify an area of importance to you. So these are the topics which are all over fine. Another situation I'll tell you. When I was a student or postgraduate, we used to work in dog lab. We had a wonderful dog lab in our hospital. We used to do all kinds of surgeries. Liver transplant, kidney transplant, vascular anastomosis, intestinal anastomosis, whatever we used to do there. Suddenly, beta came and the thing stopped. We had to close our dog lab. And so how do we train our students? On human, always the risky. So then I explored a new world. So we had anatomy department. So I started working, virtual reality is very costly. So we started working on cadavers. And we started developing a cadaveric lab in Kenya through donations, of course, because in Kenya to get a lab like this, the government funds is very difficult. So we got donations and we started this cadaveric lab. And we started working on laboratory cadaveric. So we published our first paper as cadaver as a model in 2005. And I must tell you, this was the first paper from the Asia, and it was included in Annals of Royal College of Surgeons in a systematic review. And out of 38 studies in the world, they selected 8 and ours was only 4. So a simple idea which is haunting you and you are not able to progress and you convert it into a proper publication is accepted by the world. So select a topic which is really relevant to you. So the intellect has little to do on the road to discovery. There comes a leap in consciousness, call it an intuition or what you will. The solution comes to you when you don't know how or why. So more than too intellectual, you don't have to be Hawkins or Albert Einstein to be. You have to have that intuition for finding the research topic. If you have a good intuition, what works, what is needed, you will definitely be able to do this. So there are good criteria for a research question. Once you develop a topic, you first put it in a proper research question. And there are something called the finer criteria. And these were described in 1998. And it said very nicely, feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. 5 simple criteria. Now, what does it mean? We will explore a little more. Feasible, technical expertise training on box trainers, cost and time and money. It should be feasible within your funding. It should be available to you. You should be able to get 30 students or 30 kind of people. You can do on students, you can do it on residents, you can do it on patients. So think what is good number of patients or subjects you have. Do it, that feasibility of study is very important. Otherwise, you take a very huge project and you'll never be able to do it. As a resident, you find you have limited period of time, limited amount of resources. So take feasibility. So this was one study which was done by my ICMS student, and she was a secondary day student, and she did this study of how the training on box trains. That time I'm talking about 2005, and this paper got published in the PubMed. So she did it before she did, and we did a mixed method of study. And I did this study later on for my MHT, and this got published into Journal of Surgical Education. And we did a randomized controlled trial for the structure training of box trainers. So very simple study, anybody can do. We just took student residents, we gave them 1 versus 3 sessions of the box training and looked at their feedback, mixed method of research, and we got a properly written, it got published in the Journal of Surgical Education, which is one of the topmost journals in surgical education in the world. And I must tell you, this journal published it without much of change in the text because it was very well thought as a research question. So once your research topic is good, research question is, and what did we do actually in this case? We did all the research first and we found out there are no studies about retention of skills. Very few studies in the literature. So this is one gap which we can do it. So if we do that, then journals will open up their windows. If you do the same topic again and again, people will not. For tomorrow, I do a study like say pain in laparoscopic surgery after laparoscopic surgery. Everybody has done so much of publication. If you do the same, one more 30 students, nobody is going to publish. So try to find out a topic which is relevant to you. And let me give you a study of fetal female burns in Manipal. This is easily feasible to you. We get so many burns in our hospitals. I'm sure in Nashik, and also they must be getting so many burns patients. To do these studies are not very difficult. Second is every paper should be interesting. It should be a logical step in your career. And something like, I tell you, sorry. How do I go back? Sorry. Sure. So, to give you injuries in the runners, today it is one of the finest topic, marathon runners. I think marathon has become such an important aspect for many young people. So these are the kind of papers which are coming up. Look at this. Look at the clinical narratives in residency education, exploration of a learning process. It should be novel. Novel is like say, confirms or refutes previous findings. A thalidomide comeback. Thalidomide was a drug which came in 40s, which was discarded because it had multiple dose congenital abnormalities. We always teach this in pharmacology. But today, thalidomide has come in so many new diseases. Itself is a whole research area. Look at this madam's paper. I think I'm always amazed with the topics which our madam, the vice chancellor madam comes. Look at a paper which is in Indian pediatrics. It's the PubMed journal. Weight of school bags among Indian school children in Pune and Hyderabad. And it talks about what is the academic and health impact of it on to the students. Very interesting paper. Don't you think you feel like looking at the title, I would like to read that paper. And I'm sure everybody has such ideas with common problems. But she has just picked up that interesting topic and she has put forward this topic. Anti-malarial clinical trial protocols can be avoid risk to patients. You have falsified malaria, consent to participate in a clinical trial, double-blind study, and all these kinds of ethically has to be there. So you look at ethics has become very strong topic. So also see topics which are ethical. Animal models in forensic science research justified use of ethical exploitation. This was another study which has come over a period of time. Most important is relevance. Anticipate outcomes. Answer so what question. We used to always say that whenever you put a topic and you say this is method is better than this, ask 5 so what questions. You will ultimately get an answer. What is it? So you say, okay, this is what we have used to improve patients. So what? Then you again ask, so what, so what, so what. If you ask so what, you will come to know that this is really relevant to our place. It is going to save costs. It is going to improve the patient's outcome. It is going to improve the health of the people. Now, such answers when they start coming, you automatically raise your bar and you make it more relevant. We have been working all the time on communicating with relatives of death. I mean, this is something which is a very common problem for our country. management of EHPDO, we need to look at solutions for ourselves. Another madam's paper, very interesting paper, I must really quote it here. Health technology assessment of telemedicine applications in northern borders of India. You know, I was discussing this paper with madam when madam was doing a FAMA project in CNCL in 2008 or 9. At that time, she was posted in somewhere in Ladakh and Leh and Citations. So she thought that people there are not able to update this. So what she said, she thought about using telemedicine 10 years ahead to train those physicians who are there in practice of medicine. Such an innovative project. So now I think we are talking about COVID and using technology and all, but this was 10 years before, and that makes a very relevant project. And it's a published project. These are all projects which are published into PubMed journals and well-cited papers. The second thing what you do after you think about final criteria is you do narrow your topic. Once you've selected a topic, narrow your topic. Because today the knowledge is expanding very fast. The knowledge is expanding at the rate of every 7 days. Now that is scary. See, in 1950, it was expanding at the age of 50 years. Then it became 1 year, 3 months. Now it is 72 days. Because so many electronic digital. Now I am not able to cope up. And there is so much of knowledge in the literature. So whatever I do, people will say this is already published. So you have to get a new topic. So start narrowing your topics. So how do you do this? Study of suicides. I just thought I'd take an example because we recently had one suicide in our hospital. Study of suicides following excessive drug ingestion. Study of suicides following ingestion of psychotropic drugs. A comprehensive analysis of attempted and fatal suicide cases involving frequently used psychotropic medications. You can narrow your kind of thesis topic from what it was a broad topic to a very narrow topic. Now, most of the time, bosses say, I've seen teachers telling, you work on abdominal trauma. Now, abdominal trauma is not a thesis topic. It's not a research topic. If you are saying the impact of fast and it's on to the outcomes of patient who has abdominal trauma, and then you make it parameters, narrow it down, you can do a randomized study. I think if you start doing such kind of studies, then they have much better way of doing it rather than just, see, I feel pain when people do a thesis on abdominal trauma or something like that. So that is not a research topic. You are doing a review. Don't do reviews. Thesis topic when you are doing research, at least do something which is published. Okay, so this is something which you should do. Primary versus secondary question. So incidence of adverse reactions, primary question. Incidence of adverse reaction in a patient who present to the ENT department of tertiary referral center and their economic burden becomes a secondary question. The economic burden is my secondary, and that is also equally important. So think about primary questions and secondary questions when you are normally trying to select a topic. So take questions which have a clinical dilemma or equivalent, where the answers you don't have clear-cut answers. When you have problems, this is where you should think about your research topics. Work on what gets published, ultimately what sells. You should also see if I'm not able to publish, ultimately publication is a motivation for all of us. If it doesn't get publication, like say I do my thesis and I put it in somewhere university or in my college library, nobody looks at it, I don't feel happy. If my paper is cited by say 200 people, I feel little happy about it. So ultimately self-pride. So I must do a topic, and you should realize this not after you have done your thesis, you should realize it before you do your thesis. So think about it before and gap in the understanding. So the next issue of research is how do you go about this and how do you do research. So there's something called the Cook's recipe. Professor Cook was my colleague when I did my PhD. One of the finest writers. You should go and see his book writing. He has multiple publications. So he wrote this very nicely. Get some training, find a mentor, ask important questions, start small and grow, aim high, do not wait for a perfect study, plan for adequate time and resources, attend to ethical issues, and network with others in the field. David Cook wrote it so well. Okay, and I think you should read his paper, that how to go about the research topic. And this is something which is very simple. I mean, this is not something which is very complicated. And all of us have worked like that over a period of time. So I will also explain you my research journey. How did I really go? And I talked about my research journey. You need a mentor. You always need a mentor. And one of my friends, Dr. Digitar, always says that. And I like his quote, which I'm going to quote it now. He said, Arjuna was the most skilled person in Mahabharata. He had done fellowships. He had gone specialized training. He had gone abroad to learn. Swarga jaun alone. Fighting against the Kauravas, he got flabbergasted. He needed a mentor like Krishna to do whatever he could do. So you need a mentor. So mentorship are so important. You should be able to have a mentor to run your thing. So these were my mentors, one of the top mentors all over the world. And some of these names are so high, like Professor Blumgart and these people, these are people I was happy that they were my mentors. Dr. Bapat, who was a Professor Vice Chancellor, was my thesis guide. And he gave me such a topic that time, which we published. And our paper was quoted in that time, Goodman and Gilman's textbook of pharmacology. So I thought I was just student that time. But it is a vision of a mentor which makes you think and make you think like that. So remember, it is a hard work. So plan ahead. Again, this is from David Cook. So how do you begin hard work to recognition? You attend to a conference, in postgraduate attend conference. Don't just attend conferences and their banquets. Listen to papers. Find out, can I do this study? Is this study worth doing at my center? How is it feasible? What is the gap in this study? How can I progress that study further? Invitation, then you start getting invitations, orations, then you work and then you go ahead with all this. So we can go all over the world and attend, especially in conferences and talks because of the publications. So research is something which has made me see the whole world. Otherwise, a full-timer like me cannot go abroad. But this has helped me to really go abroad because that's the value of the research. So we did a lot of problem-oriented research. So I said I was working with Professor Bapat and with Dr. Mathur. So we did all the work which was related to the common problems of Maharashtra. So what did we do? Povidone lavages, small bowel typhoid perforations and tuberculosis perforations, which is a common topic for us. Self-Buginal dilation for corrosive, phenol as a sclerosant for portal hypertension, immunomodulation, Ayurvedic medicine. This was one of the topics with Dr. Dahanukar, and he also published many articles of this. Started from Goodwill, we did Tinospora cardiophyllum, we did a lot of studies, we tried to find out how it improves the GM-CSF and other levels and cyto kind of abilities. And this drug, which Madam created, was ultimately went and it was prepared by an international company. So starting from a lab, from simple Ayurvedic principle to convert it to an international drug, it itself is such a major journey. We have so many gems in our sciences. We need to just pick them up. And the same thing was Char Sutra and eccentric vasculopathy, all these. I can give you a number of examples of these things in our studies which were there. So suitable for our country, and these are cost-effective solutions. So we must respect them, we should work on them, we should do research, validate them, and rather than trying to follow the fancy, I'm sure we should read all foreign journals, but we should also see the problems which are facing us. So look for opportunities during your work. And this is something when you're day-to-day working, you should start looking for the opportunities. For example, I was very lucky or unlucky to be part of so many riots and conquests. And there are about 20 more. I did not really data. From Mumbai riots in 1969, when I was a student, till all this Elphiston Road tragedy and Kamla Mill tragedy, I was all in the forefront. Now, when you are in the forefront and you are treating hundreds of patients coming with bomb blast, railway accident, everything, you are many times busy. But always find out and research opportunity into this. So at that time, I wrote one first editorial, Disaster Management, Are We Ready? and I criticized him when he told him that he had no this, no this. But I was very happy that I could present this that time to then the Chief Minister. And then they created all these NDRF and then the whole guidelines for that, the disaster management. So sometimes you should be very clear. Then we published many papers on this, and then we created a lot of disaster management courses and material. And now I think disaster management is fairly ready than what it was in last 20 years. So I think sometimes back thinking like this always helps you. So importance of autopsy examination in major disasters. This is something which I thought very important. Like see, we had so many dead bodies coming in our hospital. Sometimes you find 70, 80 bodies coming in front of you. Many times our aim is only to dispose of these bodies. But more than that, we should see how I can also get some lessons from that, how we can use those in my day-to-day. To convert your activity into scholarships. I always thought that whenever you're doing any activity, you should convert it into a scholarship. What do you mean by that? Like, I must tell you that when I was doing MHP, Masters in Health Professional, we had to do a lot of studies, case studies. We had to write so. So I prepared, I got 7 course papers, so published, to include it in associational guidelines. So message paper should come out from your regular activities. Whatever you are doing regularly, you don't have to write a separate paper. Make that activity only so well planned that you can create publication out of this. Influence others. Last 20 years, many of our students first author papers in PubMed and first prizes in conferences, and these are all my students or residents who will ensure that they get their publication, they get their conferences, and they get prizes. And many of my students have published their paper before even they pass their degrees. They get wonderful challenges, and I remember many of our students are invited by all these institutions so easily. So, does motivation decrease over a period of time? Research has to be more focused and refined, and once good habits at an early age always continue. Get this into habit in residence. Don't allow it that. So, research you have to make it as a habit. So, I'm going to end with giving you some important lessons. How do you convert research as a habit? I'm sure all of you go, and how do you buy a mobile phone? Let me ask you, research in your day-to-day lives. If you want to buy a mobile phone, what do you really do? I'm sure you ask many people. You go on to the Amazon, you go on to the various sites, look at the reviews, you compare it, you find out what are the features present here. One thing is that there may be 200 features, but you use only 10 features. But you will still buy a phone which has 200 features. Just because you want to buy a 50,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupee phone. But we do a lot of research, even for a simple thing like a mobile buying, or iPad buying, a laptop buying, or you want to buy your own car. People will do a lot of research. So make it as a habit that how I'm going to use this and use those finer criteria. I'm sure this is something which is important. We buy phones with multiple features but use only few. Buy phones with features that you need and use and more prominent. So think about all this. Otherwise, many times we buy a phone, he has iPhone 14, I have to also have to have iPhone 14. Or he has Samsung, something like that, I'm going to buy that Samsung. So many times we get jazzed by the advertisements. But more than that, if you do all the research, you will know this has a better RAM, I have more data, I have better camera, I do this smaller study, the apps are there. So you can do all that research and take your things like this. Apply research to your hobbies. I always speak, and make your hobbies more enjoyable. Otherwise, many times you go and you don't apply to your hobbies. It will find I have been all over the world, I always go and this is a picture which I had taken when I went to Kailash Mansarovar. And one of the things I was saying is this, I went to Kailash, I was selected to go to Kailash Mansarovar. And that time Dr. Bapat was my professor and I was also professor. And Dr. Bapat came and he gave me a book of Swami Pranavananda. Now, you will call the Swami Pranavananda, who is he? He was a geologist. He had presented 42 papers in Royal Society of Geology on Kailash Mansarovar. Imagine that, the scientific literature. And he had done so much of research on that. And he gave the whole book to me and he said, you read this book, read the scientific aspect of Kailash Mansarovar, What is the lake, depth of a lake, flora, fauna, temperatures, land, everything. I walked through Kailash Mansarovar. I enjoyed it much more because I had done a research. And this was taught to me by my professor. So I must tell you that you bring these habits of research into your day-to-day life. Don't just go and wander. Many times we go and say, okay, this is what it is. It's fine. I mean, enjoying it is also fine. But if you put little research into these hobbies, you can make your hobbies much, very interesting in all this. So I'm sure I've done all this kind of research all over. In fact, one of the professors taught me about medical and dental photography. One of my Professor Endere, he was a classic researcher, and he used to really do research in such a way. He says your photography has to be good. If I'm operating a patient on cleft palate or cleft lip, my pre and post photo has to be good. So he first workshop he took me was for this, and he made me read about this. I think once you have a good photography and angle, which is based on research, then you start taking pictures for your research, which are useful for you. Then you automatically present it well. It's so important you're doing a wound study, pre and post wound, or you're doing, many times you'll find advertisements are all body related, fashion, weight loss, all these are hair coming up, they're all body related and change kind of advertisements. But if you do your research studies, you should know how to document it very well. And that's where your hobbies really make you a lot of importance. So never regard a study as a duty, but an enable opportunity to learn, to know liberating influence or beauty of the and spirit of your own personal joy. So enjoy your research rather than just doing it. So how do you grow up with your research? So this is something which is interesting. You begin with your poster presentation to go on grants and awards. And you slowly grow on these phases with your research. And this is something which I thought is very useful. So if you keep this motivation in your life, you'll be able to grow throughout your life. And so there are types of research topics. There's one topic which is called a descriptive, justification, and clarifying. What do you really mean by that? If I say describing robotic low angle resection, it becomes my descriptive topic. Now, robotic is my new research area where I'm trying to do a lot of robotic surgery. So you realize describing robotic low angle resection is description. If I do a study of robotic versus laparoscopic area, I say robotic is better than laparoscopic. This is a justification. That means I'm trying to prove whether one is better than another. And the third is why robotic is better than laparoscopic. That is a clarifying step. Now, if you look at the literature, 30% of studies are descriptive, 70%, 50 to 60% are justifying, and only 10 to 15% are clarifying. And there are journals who accept a particular kind of a study. So you should know what kind of study I'm doing, what topic I'm doing, and which journals to accept. So this research, you should do it before you when you're creating a topic. So if I want my paper to be published into a major journal, I must do that. Like say this journal will publish a justifying study. So I must do a justifying study. I'm not going to do only descriptive study. Because always you'll find your citations are better if you study just. Similarly, case series, you can go from descriptive to clarifying, and also you can from case series to randomized controlled trial. Depending upon your understanding, you can change your topics like this. So the lastly, if I have to summarize and take home message, because I have only got 3 or 4 minutes left. Select topics with final criteria. Feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. Select topics that will solve problems. Select topics that will add knowledge to contemporary science. And research is habit and it's not habit. Don't do it only as a thesis. Inculcate it as a habit in your day-to-day life. If you are going to do that, that's what the whole purpose of bringing dissertations or thesis into postgraduate. They have to be lifelong learners. They have to be lifelong researchers. So what was the purpose it was brought? So if you are able to do that, then probably you will be able to do it much better. So research is not an isolated specialty or a skill. It must be inculcated in every part of your life. Whether it's a career choice of your child or travel options or food, research is very important. And so that you can make your life more comfortable and enjoyable. So I would like to end by saying Joseph Bell. I was always amazed by Professor Joseph heard him, Sherlock Holmes, and I read all they were inspired by this. And he said very nicely that Bale was the inspiration for character of Sherlock Holmes. And he said it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. So it's so important. So when you select a topic, don't theorize first. You can select a broad topic, get a data, and then create theories. That was a wonderful sentence by Joseph Bell, and I think it has stayed with me throughout my life. So thank you so much, and have a very happy and successful research question. And what questions or comments you have, we'll be to answer it. Thanks so much. If somebody wants this presentation, I will keep it here. You can make it PDF, share it, you can use it so that you have all that. So questions, if anybody has. Yes. Please ask. I did not do any patents, but I think entrepreneurship has become very powerful now. So I was involved into 3 projects, like Vedic project. I don't know whether you are aware. IIT Mumbai started a Vedic project with Kenya, and some of our students have developed patents. So if a student is able to go to a patent level, yes, we created few new equipments and all, but we did not patent. But I think idea is that if the new student should be able to patent it, that's the best thing. I think we should do it. We should think about it. And many students are now promoted. JJ Hospital started the innovation lab. They started a new medical, but they're not doing so much. But I remember about 2 months ago, I had gone to one innovation conference, which was conducted by one South Pondicherry Medical College. And then they asked me to speak on fostering creativity, critical thinking, innovations, and entrepreneurship. So I realized that there are very few centers in India who are doing, but IIT Kanpur, I think they have started a new medical college, and they have one of the best medical innovation lab, and they have started working at now to level. So India, the ideas are coming. So maybe in few years we will have our own patent. Next topic. Yeah. Sure, definitely. So it helps you quite a bit. I must tell you. I mean, if many of you must be getting backaches while sitting, I think just do your ergonomics analysis and use the chair which fits to your body contour, your backache. I can assure you this. There's a Godrej, if you go, there's a wonderful lab, they make your ergonomic analysis, and then you suit your thing, it itself will find out. So put in some amount of idea and you will to make your life much easier. Any other questions from students? Any burning problems for you? Yes, please.
So you do the research, you take a sample from your institute only, or you take a sample from?
You can take anywhere with ethics committee permissions. Only thing is, if you are taking from other institution, you will require double ethics committee permission, and there has to be some primary investigator who is going to help you from that institution. Will become co-author of it, co-investigator of it. If you are doing study somewhere in another college, it's absolutely fine. That's a good question you asked. So if you're doing study from your versus some additional another student, so you take some co-investigator with a family from that institution, and you have to take it for permission. Yes, you have no questions.
So actually, when you select a topic, and if it is radiological investigation is requiring, so if it is requiring some higher radiological investigation, so whether patients only pay from themselves, because what we have
ethics committee does not allow them to pay if you are going to do as a study. But if you are going to do as a routine thing, ethics committee may permit you to do the study. So when you do that investigation specially for that, which is not needed by the patient, then the patient doesn't have to pay. But for example, you are doing a CT scan routine, and then you are going to analyze, then patients can take it. You understand my point?
Yes, I understand.
If you are doing a new study which is not required into a regular algorithm, and you are doing it as a randomized controlled trial or something, then the patient, then that has to be sponsored by institution or somebody has to pay. The patients can. These are very clear-cut ethical guidelines which we have to follow. That's the reason why people want that project to go through ethics committees. You know, ethics committees have evolved quite well. In fact, they have gone to the other extreme now. I remember in 1990 when I was ethics committee member, ethics committee was a tea meeting. These people used to just come, have tea, coffee, in 15 minutes they used to go. And now I think ethics committees go on for days and days. And there are now 3 ethics committees in KM with each ethics committee spending 1 full day with all that project. Because a lot of ethical issues have come. In fact, I must tell you, MUHS had appointed me and Dr. Shingari and in 2003 to the ICMR, and we developed the first ethical guidelines for medical education under Dr. Doktor. I think that time, I'm talking about 2003, 2004. At that time, we had done that with Dr. Harper and all that. Mr. Fugari was also there because we conducted workshops for NUHS and guidelines across India. That was the same time we created ethical guidelines. But I know these are all developments. But your question is very clear and my answer is also very clear. Patient is not involved, you have to.
So there comes funding.
Sure. Any grant which comes to you through proper channel, which is not through ChatGPT or OpenAI or something like that, is acceptable to you. I mean, the ethics committee has to also go through all this. Okay, what is the purpose of that grant? If it's a government grant or regular grant, there's no issue. Because they say external or internal grant, there's a committee. But if somebody is giving you funding, which has today, I think there's a lot of restrictions about this. So if the funding is coming properly and they show the purpose why they want to do it, I think that's it. External funding is acceptable. You have to only show why purpose has come. Oh, we get a lot of funding for if you do properly studies, you get proper funding in all grants you get. In government hospitals, we are not so eager to write. But once I did one grant writing course with in MSc I was doing, I did one grant writing course, which was an eye opener. They said there's a way to write a grant. So I think it helped me to get grants. So you have to go through all this process. You have to follow the norms and everything. And if you follow the norms, they give you. Most of the time, problem is we don't write projects well. We don't write our research projects well. If you write your research project, go through this grant writing and write your projects well, I think you should be able to get grants. I remember I was in management council of one of the universities in Kerala, and they got almost 9 or 10 crore grant for their university. So NIH and all this. They get money. Write projects well. Just they make some acronym or media and some new tool and something kind of research. It was really relevant to the local population and was adding to the global kind of knowledge. So they got that. So you have to write your projects well. Not only idea has to be good, but you have to write it. So think about it. So that's the problem. We don't write it. So get some training. Yes, Cheta. That's where
them also. But out of this collaborators.
Yeah. Of course. The collaborators are best because I think same thinking process many times gives you a lot of idea. Me and Payal have written so many papers on Air India flights, and they're all published papers. We wrote first paper I think in 2007 on the need for faculty development. Then I think we also wrote a paper on networking in medical education. All these papers were conceived with our peers, on conferences or workshops or when you're having lunch or something like that. And these are the places, if there are same thoughts, collaborate, nothing wrong about it.
So what are the best practices to communicate and actually have them?
See, before writing, you should have very clarity of thought. Okay, who is going to write? What is the purpose of writing? Who is going to be the first author? Who is going to read? And then how are you going to do? Later on, there should not be any fights. And the first thing is the purpose is same. Like many of our papers, if my papers have been across all over internationally also. I remember we had gone to an AMI conference where Zubair was there. Zubair, me, Thomas, and they wrote in academic medicine about 100 years of lectures. And then sometimes we write papers in some conference, we go and we discuss. Many times you don't know the person, but they come with good ideas, good collaborators to start writing papers. So the question is, if you feel that person is a very sincere and honest collaborator, you should not bother. Okay. If it's a grant, I would try to do it with people whom I know for some period of time. Because the money involved, I would like to have honest people who have a trust. I would like to do with anybody and not anyone. That is my feeling, but I'm sure they'll have their own thoughts. Yes, any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think each sentence, each word that you have said is a take-home message for each one of us. The strengths, the weaknesses, how we can make it into a research question. I think all of us have a fair idea about it now, and I guess they put it in practice as well. So thank you very much, sir. And as you all must have noticed that sir, the multifaceted personality from all the things that he has shown, the research topic is just one small thing, but the entire picture is totally magnificent. जसं म्हणतात ना की सूर्याला दिवा दाखवतो तसं आहे ते. I still remember that sir is not only an avid reader, but he writes also very well. So he has published nearly 5 books and weekly articles which are published in the newspapers. A social worker with empathy, compassion. He donates blood and he's been awarded as a Centurion donor award also. He received 120 not just once or twice, 120 times. So I guess we all have to learn lessons and follow them as role models that these people are in front of us. So take home message from me would be that. And sir, as you mentioned about disasters for 1992, as interns and as students, we were there and we saw the things that the photos when we showed, it brought back the same memories. But let me tell you that even in that scenario, sir's unit, whether it was OPT or casualty or rounds, wherever it was, never lost cool, or the patience and the determination with which 24/7 the work was going on at the hospital is something that we have learned a lot from. So thank you very much, sir. With those few words, I'll just request our Pro VC sir to kindly felicitate our chief speaker tonight, today. Sorry. Thank you very much. I would also request our Pro VC sir to say a few words, please.
सगळ्यात महत्वाचं म्हणजे आता नवीनच आपल्याकडे पीजी कोर्स चालू होतोय आणि सगळ्यांनाच पेपर रायटिंग आणि थेसिस रायटिंग याचा आहे आणि मॅक्सिमम आपले जे काही स्टुडंट्स आहेत दे आर मोस्ट केपेबल स्टुडंट हू टेकन ऍडमिशन फॉर MPGI and the whole teachers who are also enthusiastic and they are also very keen to clear their topics to their students also. तर माझ्या मते आजचं जे काही लेक्चर झालं ते सर्वांसाठी उपयुक्त झालं आणि या प्रकारचे जे लेक्चर्स आहेत ही फक्त सुरुवात आहे. तर मेन जे टॉपिक्स आहेत ते माझ्या मते सुपेसरांना आपल्याला पुन्हा बरोबर लागेल की जेणेकरून आपल्याला हे जे टॉपिक्स आहेत ते प्रॉपरली अजून डिलिव्हर करता येतील. धन्यवाद.
Thank you very much, sir. I would now like to thank all of you and our chief speaker, Pro VC sir, our COE, our finance officer, all the dignitaries who have come from the administrative building, from the administrative side, as well as from NDJI, our Dean Sir, Dr. Sen, HOD of Research Department, all others who have contributed in some way or the other for the success of this particular small workshop that we have had, small session that we have had. Dr. Bansal ma'am, who is the chair professor for medical education, I would like to thank her also on this occasion, and from various medical colleges who have joined here, and those online who are watching this particular session. So thank you all of you, and this is the end of the session, but not the end of what we have to do further. So thank you very much, sir.